our goal is that they feel less alone, they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel loved, and that we can help provide them tools and resources to propel them back into their life and take this pain, this deep pain, and turn it into purpose. And their lives have purpose. And I think many of us, walk through just different seasons in our life where we're in the valley, and knowing that God will plant really beautiful seeds and water them sometimes through our hurt. But we can look back and see how beautiful that garden is, and how he's using that pain for purpose. And that's, really our objective here at Healing at the Well is helping launch these women back into the world with purpose, and knowing that they're less alone in their grief.
Well, today we're going to talk about a challenging topic of losing one's spouse, and losing a spouse really when no one was prepared. I don't know if you're ever prepared, but sometimes when we have cancer and those lingering long-term illnesses, we have a little bit of time to prepare. But with these two guests, they had no time to prepare. And it's a beautiful story of God's redemption and how he brought them together as friends, with one gal who's a little bit older than the other who had already walked the path. And you're just going to be blessed by their story and how they have turned tragedy around for triumph for the Lord. And thanks for joining. And I really am praying for this episode that it will bless you as much as it has blessed me. Welcome to the Generous Girl podcast. Today, I am joined with two new friends who live about 20 minutes from here in San Clemente, beautiful San Clemente. And their names are Nicole and Amy, and they run a very, very special ministry called Healing at the Well, which I am going to allow them the privilege of sharing with you all about it. But I would just want to welcome them and get started by letting them tell their stories, because they each have quite powerful story, and I love how God brought them together as fast friends, and they're really changing the conversation about widows and what others who are not widows can do to help support widows. And we can just all be there for one another as the body of Christ. So welcome, Nicole and Amy. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Such an honor and privilege to be here.
Yes.
Oh, well, I love that we were connected and told, Kim, you got to meet Nicole and Amy. And last fall, we got together in person, and I got to see your beautiful space in the church where you're holding this area, where women can gather. And I was just really touched. And that's really the reason for having you on this podcast, because I haven't done that many episodes about widows. We have touched upon widows before. I had Audra Ames, who became a widow in her 20s when her pilot Air Force husband was killed in a plane crash. Very, very powerful story. But really just the subtext of the Generous Girl podcast is, how do we keep going? How do we keep going when life throws us curveballs, things that we didn't expect? And we all have those. And so my hope is, by the incredible women guests like yourselves that I've had on the show, when each of us hears the story of that episode, we can think, wow, if Nicole and Amy can take the next step, then whatever hard thing I'm facing, I can take the next step in my own life and wherever I am in my journey. And the two pillars we'll focus on today will be faith and family, as I know your faith has really, really carried you through some very dark times. And then your family, and you've both lost your husbands, and I'll let you each tell the story of what happened, but how that's just had a huge impact on you, obviously your kids, but then how you're allowing that pain and that pain you've gone through to move to purpose, and knowing that God sees every hurt and he never wastes a hurt. And it's already just such a beautiful story he's weaving with how you've redeemed just the pain to help others. So I'll let you choose who wants to go first and tell us your story.
You want to go first?
Sure, I could go first. Sure.
So Amy, we're going with Amy Darcy.
Yeah, my name's Amy Darcy, and I lost Joe, my late husband, 13 years ago. It was 2 days before my 40th birthday, And I was a teacher a professor at Miracosta College. And I was prepping and I got the call that never in a million years would I dreamt of getting that call that would change my life forever. So that's kind of where that started. I'll just backtrack for a second. I was born and raised in San Juan Capistrano, and I was the oldest of two brothers. I went to Capo Valley Christian for high school and junior high. I accepted the Lord in my heart when I was in 6th grade, which really, truly never did I guess that would be the foundation and that would carry me through so many highs and lows of my life. My relationship with God. He offered me love and peace at that time in my life when I was just in 6th grade. I don't know how old I was, like 12 years old or something. And I remember clinging to him when my parents were divorced and just all the things in life that came my way. I ended up at Point Loma Nazarene University, and I majored in child development. So I've always had such a heart for children and family. And I met Joe there. We both graduated, became special ed teachers.
That is a calling and privilege.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's crazy, right?
Special people. A lot of patience.
Yeah, we loved it so much. We went and did our masters together. And I met Joe my senior year. He was tall, dark, and handsome from Massachusetts. He transferred in to Point Loma, and we became great friends and eventually started dating. And then we got married a few years later. We were really young when we got married. We were like in our early 20s, 22, 23. And he was the love of my life. So that was pretty, it was awesome, but little did I know that he did, once we got married, he did struggle with some depression. And that kind of led us on a journey of kind of battling that. We had highs and lows and on medication and off medication. And eventually it became more than he could manage. So about 5 years in, we had Gabriel, my son, who's 22 now. He is a baseball player at University of San Diego.
Oh, that's where my daughter got her master's. Yay.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful campus.
That's where he is, living the dream.
Totally.
He graduates this year, so we'll see what happens after that. So we had Gabriel, which just was the joy of our life, really. He was such a treasure, still is. And then 6 years later, we had Shane. And, but we kind of waited in that journey because of Joe's struggles with mental health. And he was diagnosed with dysthymia, which is like a lower grade depression. And he couldn't get the meds really under control. And so he started self-medicating and kind of hiding alcohol and things like that, which eventually led to some bad choices, and which led to January 22nd, where he ended up taking his life. And
so sorry.
Yeah, it was really, really sad. And we tried everything. I mean, specialists, doctors, rehab, recovery homes. We were married 15 years. So it was really difficult. And to watch such a beautiful soul struggle like that. And I think that's one thing that Nicole and I could attest to, is that I think people look at, a lot of people look at people who struggle with addiction like they're bad people, or, it's just sad to watch somebody really struggle with that. And I'm sure you've had people talk about that here on your podcast.
Totally. And just how it's so the opposite of they're
opposite.
so not a bad person. I mean, the things that, the way addiction plays out, and the depression, the illness, and then you are on the outside trying to do everything you can for that person, and helpless, feeling so helpless. Or the meds get all situated, and then the person thinks, okay, now I don't need them anymore.
Yeah.
Or
I don't feel good on them, or whatever it is. And then it's just once they start, I don't know, it's just really a rough go.
So rough.
So, and then with children, Nicole and I could both attest to that, trying to get them the care and the help that they need and the therapy and keep your home stable and do all the things is just really overwhelming. So I guess I'll bump it up a bit. So then January, Joe had kind of been in a recovery home, and that's where he died by suicide in a recovery home. And it was the worst moment of my life when I got that phone call. And I just remember I couldn't breathe, it really, it just was awful. And to this day, if I think back to that, I get so emotional.
Oh, Amy, I'm sure.
It was so scary. And it was scary. Like that really, it scared me to think that he was in danger, because they didn't know where he was when I got the phone call. And they had asked if I had seen him, and I hadn't. He was supposed to be in their care. And so long story short, that happened. And I don't know. I just don't know how I pulled it together. I look back at it and it was like, I just remember not being able to breathe. Literally, like I felt like I was choking and my stomach was just going to like burst. The knots were like, and the tears I just had no control of my emotions. But somehow, God just prepared me, and like the right people stepped in at the right moment. They brought me, I remember the food that people brought me. I remember some of the prayers. I remember the hugs. I remember the letters.
Wow.
And randomly I'd get a check, like for $500 from someone that I knew from like junior high.
Wow.
I mean, it was just like somehow the Lord absolutely 100%
carried you through.
Carried me through, like literally carried. And my boys got to witness all of that and see. And
the hands and feet of Jesus. Yeah.
It is absolutely right. Yeah. And so my boys are so close to me, and we did it. Like we're doing it still, and it doesn't go away. It never will. And anyway, so that led me to a few years later, I ended up reconnecting with somebody from high school who was divorced and had 4 kids. And we ended up getting married.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And so he had the 4 kids. So we blended a family. I ended up moving back home. So I live in San Clemente now, 11 years ago. And the kids now, I mean, I have 1 child at home right now. Everybody, I can't believe it. We've launched everybody.
You're going into I'm just going to send me bonbons now.
I don't know about that.
It never happens.
So it's beautiful to see how God has truly had his hand on my boys, especially. And to this day, they both love Jesus, and that's important to them. And I am grateful that I feel like they both have really good coping skills. So far, so good. They reach out, they go to counseling as needed. So yeah, I mean, I could go on and on.
Right.
So I don't know if
that's perfect. No, it's good. We'll give Nicole a chance as well. I guess the last question, I'm just mentioning counseling, because I know the ministry that you and Nicole run offers this one-on-one counseling. How did that play a huge role for yourself in addition to your kids, just going through grief counseling? Did you get help from a pastor or therapist or friends, family? Yes. What do you feel helped you?
So when I did counseling for Joe, yes, I was actually already in counseling when he died. So we had like a whole team with us when he died, which I was very grateful. Joe had a counselor. I had one. My boys were in counseling. And then as we've gone through the seasons over the course of the last 13 and a half years, we've changed, we've had to change counselors a little bit, and depending on the boy's age and myself too, it impacted me. It truly was like a space that I could go and find hope and healing for myself. And I could be real and honest and cry, and it was safe, and I felt heard and understood. So that really, truly,
not alone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that empowered me, gave me, really truly empowered me, and gave me a heart to want to do God gave me this dream. So we'll share that later.
Yes.
But anyway, it really, truly gave me a heart to want to reach the women at their darkest hour. So, anyway.
Okay, we'll popcorn over to Nicole, and then we'll go back to you and pick up at the dream. So Go ahead, Nicole, share your story.
Thank you. Well, it's just an honor and a privilege to be here today. I'll start, I guess, early on. I grew up in Oregon. That's where my family is from, a suburb of Oregon. I went to University of Oregon and studied psychology with the intent of becoming a mediator and or counselor. And then leaving school, I realized, gosh, I'm not going to make very much money to survive being a counselor. And so I spent almost 20 years in healthcare marketing. I started in sales and moved up the corporate ladder in marketing. And my career took me to Indianapolis 4 years. And then I was recruited out here to Southern California and spent some time working at several startups in the healthcare industry before my late husband passed away. So that was like the early part of my career, but it's funny how God works and how things come full circle, and what we're doing now is really what my heart was when I started school years ago.
True.
I lost my husband, Brandon, 5 years ago, November. And I met him, I was on vacation in Maui, and he had just moved there, and we had both ended relationships. And it was my last day. I met him on the beach, and he was tall, 6'3", blue eyes, super handsome guy. Certainly wasn't expecting to meet anyone on my girls' trip in Maui, and we talked every day.
Wow.
And then I went back to Oregon, and we found a way to see each other once a month and dated long distance for about a year before he moved to Indiana to go back to school and be with me. And we dated for about 5 years before we were married, and we had so much fun. He was just like the guy that was full of life, who would walk into a room and give you the biggest bear hug. And he had a way of making me laugh. I tend to be like very driven, focused, achiever by nature. And he had a way of just calming me and making me laugh and take life less seriously. So he was just a joy to be around. And I was so excited to start our life together and build a life together. After a year of marriage, we started trying to have children and discovered that I had infertility. I had a severe case of endometriosis. And so we walked through infertility and IVF. And we were so blessed that the first round worked for us. And I was pregnant with boy-girl twins who turned 12 on Friday.
Wow.
I can't believe it.
Wow.
They are truly the joy of my life.
Gift.
Such a gift and a blessing, and they're what keep me going every single day. They're just my angels. I'm just so blessed by them. So yeah, I think, Brandon and I were 25 and 26 when we were married. And I noticed after I had the babies, he didn't slow down in terms of adjusting our life to adapting to boy-girl twins. And so he would stay up really late and drink and pass out, kind of like a functioning alcoholic. And as a mama, your hormones kick in, and your desire to ensure that your babies are taken care of are most important. And I just slowly noticed some of those habits getting worse and worse over that period of time. He had some childhood trauma that led to addiction, and he turned to alcohol, marijuana, Adderall, pornography, sex addiction, a lot of things that I didn't know until after he passed. But I think he harbored a lot of shame and guilt, which led to, his mental illness struggle. And it was really, really hard. In the heart of his addiction, he attacked me and ended up in rehab for a year. And I just think really struggled with the shame and the guilt of what, the decisions that occurred from his addiction. And so in November of 2019, it was a normal day. He had taken the kids to a soccer reception. I was getting my hair done. I came home and I noticed that his behavior was a little off and that he was kind of scaring me. And I just said, like, I don't feel safe with you in the home right now. And he sat in his car that night and drank a bottle of vodka and inhaled carbon monoxide and died by suicide in our garage.
As a host of this, I don't even know what to say. I mean, I say I'm so sorry, but it's just there are no words for both of you and what you've gone through.
Certainly not how I expected life to go.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, there are no words, but I can tell you, the moment I found him, I had this overwhelming sense that God was with me. I heard him say that I've prepared you your whole life for this. Mm-hmm. It was so loud, and he was right there by my side when I had to do the unthinkable. I won't go into those details, but yeah, he is what carried me through every day. I think, to Amy's point, the amount of people that showed up when you're in shock, people delivered groceries, food for months, but grief can be incredibly lonely and isolating. People who haven't walked through it oftentimes just don't get the depths of the pain and isolation. And so I turned to my faith every single day. I could barely read. It felt like my brain was smashed, but I could read like a little devotional and I would pray. And I knew that God is what carried me through every single day. And my children, having to get up each and every day and model for them that we have to put one foot in front of the other and we have to keep going is what got me through the early days. And then community. There really wasn't much of that when I was walking through grief. By the grace of God, Amy and I were connected. Somebody who'd walked through something almost identical 10 years prior to me. And that was such a gift to be able to have that. And then I had the opportunity to attend a retreat through Never Alone Widows in July of 2021. And walking into a room of 20 young widows who have children at home and knowing like, oh, wow, I'm not alone. And that just feeling seen and heard and lavishly loved. It was such a gift and so beautiful. And during that time, the Lord planted on my heart in a one-on-one prayer to come home and create community for widows and that we would heal broken hearts. And so that's kind of how we got to where we're at today. There's lots and lots of details behind the years that went into becoming Healing at the Well, but that's how we got to today.
Well, thank you for sharing your story, for both of you, just for being real, transparent, and authentic and honest. And we're going to segue into what you've done with that pain and the ministry that has been birthed out of this pain. But when I think of the Generous Girl podcast, and, we talk about how generosity is interwoven in these 5 areas: faith, family, fitness, finance, and friendships. And then I think of, like we said, the family and the faith element that we're calling out today. A lot of the times on this podcast, we're educating women to be more knowledgeable about finances or how to live, obviously a generous life. But in scripture, we're commanded to take care of widows. And like you said in our pre-conversation, they are all around us. And I think that is a beautiful sign of living a generous life, whether it is bringing food to a widow or whether it's praying for a widow or it's driving a widow somewhere or being aware that widow is in your midst. Like all the tragedy that just recently happened with the fires in the Palisades and how I know someone who's lost a couple of homes there and how people have just moved on is how it can feel. It's like it just goes forward and those people have no homes and it's just gone. And same with when a tragedy like a death happens, you're the one who had the relationship and you're the one just so affected, and yet life in the grocery store, it still goes on and life is just going. And I think we can forget, like especially the widows, which is why God calls out, take care of the widows, take care of the orphans, and don't forget. So the fact that you were then both led to launch this ministry, Healing at the Well, I think is such a beautiful step of not being paralyzed. And, we had Kay Warren on the podcast a number of episodes ago, and through her losing her son, Matthew, to suicide, she's launched the whole mental health ministry, and they have Breathe as the retreat coming up actually in April, of this year. This podcast will come out after that has happened, but they do this annual retreat in San Juan Capistrano for all the families that are, surrounded by someone with mental illness, and they need to be loved on and breathed into so they can keep going. So I just love how, God never wastes a hurt. And when we can use our pain to not only help others, but obviously it helps us as we heal through the process of doing what he's called us to do. It's very beautiful, because the alternative is to become paralyzed, to become just unable to move, unable to do anything to take the next step, to be bitter, to be resentful. And then your life is passing you by. And like you said, you felt like he was right there with you, and he wasn't surprised this happened, and he knew, and he's prepared you for this next step that when you were, like you had said, Amy, so young, when you in 6th grade knew him, he couldn't have told you then what you would be facing later, because you wouldn't have been ready for it. But he
might have run for the hill.
You'd run the other way. Exactly. But just his gentleness and love to gracefully prepare us. And then when we step into that new chapter, he has equipped us, and then he'll give us the strength. And not saying it's going to be easy by any means, but I think our faithfulness, our obedience then is what all he wants, because then he can work through us and do such a mighty work. And I know you never thought you'd be leading this ministry, but having been there and seen it, and seen the women, leave the room and the others come in after our conversation, and just, I love what you're doing. So let's go back to the dream, and you take it from there, Amy.
Well, it's interesting as we're talking, because I was thinking back to when Joe died. I started a survivors of suicide loss group, because there was nothing for widows. There was nothing, and I was all alone. And I started this group because I needed something that was faith-based, because that was I was clinging to my faith. I absolutely was clinging to it. And so I went to my local church, which is in your community, and they were absolutely, you can start a group here. So I did. And I did that for actually several years. And then when I moved back to San Clemente, I started a group here also, which was survivors of suicide loss. And that group in North County continued. I handed it over to another gal. Long story short, I met Nicole. She was referred to me and through a friend. And that was just a sweet friendship that I never had met anyone who had a similar experience as mine. Being that her husbands died the same way and all of that. We had kids. I'm a little older than her.
Further down the
road. But anyway, so Nicole, like she shared, she had this dream, this prayer that God gave her to create community here in San Clemente. And meanwhile, I'd taken a little bit of a break from running the group that I had been running. I'd done it for several years, and I was busy raising 6 kids and all of that. And she had asked me, would you want to come alongside of me and start this group? And I was like, I thought about it, and I'm like, absolutely. So that was 4 years ago. 4 years ago, we've been running Never Alone, which is a group that is once a month. And Nicole could maybe share more about that, because that was kind of her baby in a sense. But that has been become like a full-time job almost. We love it. We are blessed by the women. We get to see hundreds of women come in and come in so broken, and then walk away with hope and some joy, which is really beautiful.
So beautiful.
And so out of that group, I don't know when it was. Maybe, has it been 2 years?
2 years.
2 years. The Lord gave me a dream. And I never, ever have had a dream before in my whole life. And I had a dream that I literally was sleeping and woke up from, my sleep. And I literally had tears in my eyes thinking about it. Was the most powerful dream. And the dream was I was standing at Dana Point Harbor, which is kind of where I'm from. And I was up on the hill, and on the hill looking down at the harbor. And I see all these women swimming in the harbor. They were like swimming from Catalina Island as fast as hard as they can. And they were breathing, their breath was labored. And I was watching them. And behind me, I had all these women, and the women were swimming and swimming and swimming. And they were trying to get to the safe and dry shore and the land, and where there was green trees and sunshine. And it was so powerful to me. And as they were swimming behind them, this sounds kind of gory, but there were like wolves with these like gnawing teeth. And I was standing up on the hill, and I was with my arms open wide. I was like, now we have to help now. And today. And so that was in a nutshell, the dream. And it was so powerful to me. And it was like, I was like, you have to start something where you are actually working with these women and meeting them at more of a personal level. Because we had our group that was once a month, but there was a need for more. And as a special ed teacher, I have a heart to help people. And I had thought in the back of my mind one day, maybe I would do some counseling. I didn't really know, but I just was kind of like at this age, I'm 53 now, but I was 50-ish. And I was like, Lord, where do you want to take me on my journey? Do I go back to the school district? All the things, right?
Sure.
And so this dream, I could not tell the dream without crying. It was that powerful to me. It really impacted my heart. So of course I shared it with Nicole, and I was like, I just have this idea. Like, how do you feel about it? And she's like, oh, great. And so one thing led to another. The name kind of came about, Healing at the Well. I just picture Jesus coming to the well with the woman at the well, and she was broken and an outcast and sad and hurting. And the Lord met her there with his grace and his comfort and his compassion. And to me, I couldn't think, it just was a beautiful, beautiful thing. And that was my life. I felt like the Lord has truly met me in a broken place where I felt very much alone. Suicide is very isolating, and you feel like you can't even I couldn't even say the word for like years.
Wow.
You just feel embarrassed by it. You feel scared. You feel just this, there's not really words to explain it. So long story short, that is kind of how this has all come about. And I don't know, do you want to, I'm talking so much. I feel like maybe she.
Yeah, sure. No, Nicole, why don't you explain more about Healing at the Well? And
I'll share a little bit about, how we got here. So I came back from my retreat with this calling to create community for widows. And I shared with Amy, hey, I can't imagine doing this with anyone but you. So we launched our local group, the first Never Alone local group in the US in the fall or winter of December 2021. And we've served over 200 widows in Southern Orange County. And what we saw most frequently as the biggest need in that community is requests for counseling. And so when Amy shared this dream with me, well, at first I was like, you're crazy. We're so busy. We're never going to have enough time to do this. We can barely keep up with what we're doing. And the more I prayed about it and thought about it, it was like there's this huge unmet need. In the United States, there are 2,800 new widows every single day. It is the most stressful, the number one most stressful event that can happen to any human is becoming a widow. So just such a huge need, and they're everywhere. They're in our community. They're at the grocery store. They're sitting in your church. Their children are suffering, and
Never Alone is a national ministry.
Yeah, Never Alone is a national ministry. It's a nonprofit that's based in Atlanta that serves widows all over the U.S. Through retreats, conferences, and then we helped launch local groups throughout the U.S. So it's amazing. It's a great opportunity for someone outside of Southern California seeking connection and community. They're also here shortly going to be offering an online community for those who don't have face-to-face communities. So I think for both of us, having community and connection was such a huge part of our healing journey, knowing that we're not alone. And our hope for creating this space at Healing at the Well is to be able to walk alongside that widow in those days of grief when you're feeling alone and isolated as if nobody understands it, and to be able to create a space that allows for hope and healing, and hopefully, impacting generations to come by walking alongside them, helping them find hope and healing, allowing them to be a better version of themselves for their children, providing hope and healing for their children, so that it doesn't impact them for the rest of their lives in a negative way. So this space has been such a beautiful blessing. We offer group counseling sessions, coffee and conversation weekly, where women can come as they are and just share what's on their heart, what they're struggling with this week. We have one of those coming up here this afternoon. We offer one-on-one counseling sessions. Amy is trained to work with children. We have monthly workshops where we cover different topics that are struggles in grief, using different sides of our brains through creativity, all sorts of different offerings. We're working on curriculum to be able to offer a course, a face-to-face course. We are offering a Bible study that's written for widows, by widows, and really just trying to meet these women where they're at in their grief. Our goal is that they feel less alone, they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel loved, and that we can help provide them tools and resources to propel them back into their life and take this pain, this deep pain, and turn it into purpose. And their lives have purpose. And I think many of us, walk through just different seasons in our life where we're in the valley, and knowing that God will plant really beautiful seeds and water them sometimes through our hurt. But we can look back and see how beautiful that garden is and how he's using that pain for purpose. And that's, really our objective here at Healing at the Well, is helping launch these women back into the world with purpose, and knowing that they're less alone in their grief.
Well, I just want to do just such a huge shout out to both of you for having the courage, conviction, listening to the Spirit's voice, and knowing how to take the next step when you could have easily just sat there in your grief and not, turned it around to help others. But I'm just proud is not the word, but very proud of you both. And I hope every woman listening hears your story, and, maybe they are a widow, but maybe they're not a widow, but all of us have pain in this fallen world. And maybe it's, from cancer, or maybe it's from the loss of a loved one, our parent, or a child, or all the things that can happen in this world. And no one's immune to the pain, but I do feel that the difference in someone who is just able to really be used by the Lord is they're just surrendered to his will, and knowing that he was not surprised by the pain, and he knows exactly what you're going through. All those tears he's bottling up in heaven, he's not wasting one of them. But just really, I just think there's a lot of redemption in the beauty from ashes when we allow him to work, and we allow the light to prevail and not the darkness. And it's never perfect. It's always messy. I mean, looking at the two of you, knowing you have 8 kids between the two of you, and you're able to do all that you're doing is so huge. And I think that's just the message for the listener is, keep going, and it's all worth it. Don't give up. It's a long game. And the more we trust, the more we seek help, and not just the professional counseling like we talked about, but the community and locally, wherever you are, please don't be doing your life alone, because whether you're in a crisis or not in a crisis, we were never designed to just, navigate this life by ourselves. And even if you're married, I mean, that's wonderful and that's great, and you have your spouse, but as a female, you need other women in community to be there, iron sharpening iron, to pray for you, and to really understand what it is that you're going through, because your spouse for sure can understand and brings that element from a male perspective, but there is the female side that I look back at my life and the women that have been there along the journey, many for all the years, for a long, long time. I literally couldn't have done it without them. And I'm just so grateful. And I love that you recognize that and you're providing that for women. And so if someone's listening and they're here in Orange County, Southern California, you can obviously get connected in person, but there is this Never Alone chapter that's available across the United States. And that would also be something to look up. So I guess finally, before we transition for your favorite book and Bible verse and bargain, would be they can find you at healingatthewell.org, and you have a fundraising page with the Donate Now button. So I always love to use this podcast for doing a shout out for all of you out there who have funds in your donor advised fund. You've already given them, you've already gotten the tax deduction. And if you feel led to, go to the NCF website in your own giving fund, and even if you don't have a giving fund through NCF, you can still donate from your donor advised fund directly into Healing at the Well. And I know that every dollar for every nonprofit is very valuable. So if you're feeling led to do that, and that's one of the purposes of this podcast, well, that would warm my heart to know that this episode helped Nicole and Amy reach more women with your message. So, okay. How about you, Nicole? Let's start with you with your favorite book, Bible verse, and bargain to share.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of combine my favorite book right now and Bible verse.
Okay.
So I had the honor among hundreds of women to contribute to a devotional. And I think often in grief, it's really hard to read big books. And so every morning I start my morning with a devotional. It's called The Widow's Mite.
The Widow's Mite.
And
MIGHT. I love that.
Yes.
Oh.
And I contributed two, but I'll read you July 28th because it has one of my favorite verses. Isaiah 61, 1-3. He has sent me to provide for those who mourn in Zion, to give them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, festive oil instead of mourning, and splendid clothes instead of despair. And they will be called righteous trees planted by the Lord to glorify him. And I'll just read this quick little devotion out of it. After losing my husband, I felt so alone and isolated, but Jesus whispered to me every day. He was there wiping away my tears, weeping with me. I laid it all at Jesus' feet every day, trusting that only he could redeem what had been taken. He planted other widow sisters in my life, and at the right time, like little seeds, to help me feel seen and heard, and to let me know that I was not alone. This chapter of deep suffering makes us more Christ-like and has encouraged me to take my deep pain and suffering and turn it into purpose, to bring widows together in community and to help them know Jesus. Only Jesus can write this beautiful story. Jesus will plant seeds of hope in your life that will be watered by your tears and turned into the most beautiful, deep-rooted trees. So Jesus, I pray that you will take my deep suffering and plant seeds of hope watered by my tears, turn them into a crown of beauty for ashes.
Love that. Thanks for sharing that. So beautiful.
And then my bargain, lately, eggs are really expensive.
Oh my goodness, they're so expensive.
And Trader Joe's still has some good quality eggs for like $5.
Yeah.
So that's my latest bargain.
I'm glad you said that. I just placed, I like to place, we have a Walmart that's super close by. So I placed it online, and I drive up and they load it in my car. And I placed an order for a dozen eggs, and then it was like, oh, we're out of stock. So we substituted it with this. Is that okay? And the one they substituted it with was a dozen eggs for $17. And I was like, no, this is not okay. We're going to go without eggs. Yes. Thank goodness for Trader Joe's. Always happy to do a shout out for them.
Yes, so funny.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for sharing. Okay. Amy, bringing us home to home plate.
Bringing us home. So I'll say my verse, which I have over here on the wall in my office, is Psalms 91:4. I have a lot of favorite verses, but this one has really hit home, over the last several years. Is He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. And that is truly my life. I feel so safe under His wings. I mean, I feel safe in the arms of Jesus, and I truly do. And the book, I have a couple books. Do you want me to share?
Sure.
The first one that I am reading in a book club with my best girlfriends from college is The Emotionally Healthy Woman by Jerry Scazzaro.
Scazzaro. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Emotionally Healthy Church with Pete Scazzaro, her husband.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't read that, but I read about it. But she is a Christian woman talking about setting really good boundaries and learning when to quit and when to say no and how to communicate as a woman, in her mid, 50s, 40s, as our seasons are changing. Mm-hmm. So, and being true to our faith in the midst of it, which is really great. And then another book that I'm reading is Giving Your Words, the Life-Giving Power of a Verbal Home. Mm-hmm. And that's by Sally and Clay Clarkson. And that is talking about the words that we choose. And I found that really true also in our ministry and here at Healing at the Well, is the way we treat each other and the way we communicate to the widows. Just, really God uses our words. Mm-hmm, the power mm-hmm. of our tone and all of those things is life-giving. Right. And so praying that God guides our words and how we speak to one another, I think is really important. Mm-hmm. And then I guess my bargain, gosh, I was thinking I found a really great gas station.
Okay.
I drive all the way over to, there's a little gas station on well, we call it North Beach. You probably don't know North Beach, but we call it Berry Brothers. So we give all the kids gift cards and we always go out of our way to go there to get gas. It's a little cheaper than Costco, actually.
There you go. In Southern California, that matters because our gas is, for some reason, about the most expensive in the nation always.
Why?
I don't know. And we drive everywhere.
Well, so anyway,
that is so great. And there's so much I could say to what you just shared. I'll just do it really quickly because I know we're at time. But the picture of being covered by his wings. I don't know if you followed, but there's a webcam of the eagle up in Big Bear, and you see it just had 3 little babies, and it had a fish in the nest, and it's feeding them, and it's got its wings covering them, and it's just such a visual. And then I love the Emotionally Healthy Church and their ministry. And that came about, I don't know if you're aware, but one morning, they had 4 daughters and he's getting ready to preach that morning. And he's like, okay, let's go. And the wife, Jerry, is like, I'm not going. Why not? She's like, because who you are on the platform is very different than you are at home. And I'm not going to sit there and support it. And that began, him unpacking everything and trying to be really emotionally healthy and whole, which I have so much respect for because we all need to do that. Because if we live compartmentalized, eventually it's going to come out, or stuffing something down is going to come out another way. So love that they have been on that road and that journey for so long. Yeah. So, well, you both are amazing. I'm so grateful to know you. It's just such an honor and a privilege. And I just am grateful for your stories and sharing just how you're both living such generous lives. And I look forward to connecting with you again in the future and seeing all that God is going to continue to do through this ministry. So thank you so much for your time and God bless. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us today on the Generous Girl podcast. We're so glad that you're here. And if you know of someone that you think needs to be a guest on this podcast, please reach out to us. New episodes are released every other week, and you can follow us on YouTube and on all platforms. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.